Good morning, Central. Good to be with you this morning on Facebook or YouTube, wherever it is that you're watching us this morning. Do me a favor and say hello to each other in the comments. Tell everybody happy weekend. It's Saturday, and that you're looking forward to seeing everybody together again soon. I'm looking forward to Central Online. We're going to be all joined together as one big church tomorrow, starting at 9:30 on Facebook and also on our church website. Love for you to stick around tomorrow and join us for that as well. You are studying with me on Fridays and Saturdays the book of Philippians, and I kind of sound a little bit like a broken record, I know, but I want to make sure everybody stays caught up with where we're at. Philippians is a book that builds on itself. Paul is the author. He's writing to a church in a city called Philippi, and his letter that he writes to this church starts with one argument, and then it builds on that, and it builds on that, and it builds on that. So it's really important to read the book of Philippians in the order it was written, all the way from chapter 1, verse 1 to the very end of the book, and explore the kind of logical leaps that Paul are doing. And one of those is coming up in the two verses we're going to study this morning. So glad to be here with you. If you just open up your Bibles to the book of Philippians, chapter 3, we're going to read just two verses, 15 and 16. Here's what it has to say. All of us, then, who are mature, should take such a view of things. And if on some point you think differently, that too God will make clear to you. Only let us live up to what we have already attained. Okay. We got to really talk about these two verses, because if you read those two verses by themselves, they kind of don't make a whole lot of sense. It makes you go, what's the context? I don't understand what Paul is talking about. Well, think about what he just said. Paul talked about how he is the best Jew that there ever was, and he lists all the reasons why he was the very best Jew and why he, with his body, obeyed all of God's commandments, all of God's laws. And in the end, he considers all of that just, I think the word he uses is rubbish. He thinks it's garbage, because the most important thing about being a good follower of Jesus is to know Jesus. That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, the number of times you attended church in the last 6 months. That's kind of a joke. None of us have really attended church lately, have we? But you know what I'm saying. None of that matters. Blindly following rules and expecting that to turn you into a Christian is not what it takes to make you a Christian. What does make you a Christian is knowing Jesus and obeying the commandments that he gave you. So, in light of all that, in light of that summary, Paul says, all of us who are mature should take such a view of things. So in other words, if you are a mature follower of Jesus, you should agree with Paul. And then he has a little quip. Did you see it? And if on some point you think differently, that too God will make clear to you. So in other words, Paul is saying, hey, you can disagree with me, but I'm going to just assume that God is going to set you straight at some point. So if you consider yourself a mature believer, if you are growing, you have to examine yourself and say, am I lining up with the things that Paul is teaching us? Am I, like Paul, realizing nothing that I do physically, no amount of rule following that I do is ever going to make me a good Christian? The only thing that's going to make me a good Christian is following Jesus, is having a relationship with him, is to putting into practice the things that he told us to do, acting the way that he acted. Those are the things that make us a good Christian. And then verse 16 says this, only let us live up to what we have already attained. In the Bible, there's a kind of a dual nature of a lot of topics. A lot of times God will tell someone that they are forgiven and living under grace, and then he will say, but now you need to figure out what that means. There's passages that talk about that where we are commanded to can work out our salvation with fear and trembling. In other words, we are saved, and that is absolutely certain, but now we have to figure out what that means. What does that look like? And this verse is one of those things. Only let us live up to what we have already attained. Okay. Well, as a follower of Jesus, what have I attained? Well, I'm forgiven, right? God doesn't look at me anymore and see all of my sins. He sees the fact that I'm forgiven. But now I have to live up to what I have already attained. In other words, act like a forgiven person. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that I don't allow myself to just drown in guilt and worry constantly that God is out to rebuke me and punish me. Nope. My sins are forgiven. I still need to ask for forgiveness. I still need to talk about my sins with Him. But I don't have to worry about the punishment anymore. So I have to act like I'm forgiven. I live under grace. Well, now I have to act like I'm under grace. Part of living like I am forgiven means that I offer forgiveness to other people the way Jesus taught us to do. So do you see how, like, Paul's saying, hey, you already attained grace. You already attained forgiveness. You already attained all of these things because of what Jesus did on the cross. Now live up to those things. Figure out what it means to live under those things that we get from Jesus. That is something that's going to take a lifetime. We will not finish figuring out what all that stuff means until the day we die and get to be with Jesus. So that's my encouragement for you today, church. We'll just take one of them. You are a forgiven person. If you are a follower of Jesus and have begun your walk with Him, you are His disciple. You're forgiven. Now figure out what that means on Saturday, April 15th in Rockford, Illinois. What does it mean to be a forgiven person as you go about your day-to-day life? What does it mean that if you're forgiven, how you treat people that are unkind to you, people that are kind to you, and everybody in between? That's our assignment for today, church. So I'm looking forward to spending time with you for Central Online tomorrow morning at 9:30, and I hope you have a great Saturday. Have a good day, church.